My mother's maiden name was Williams, so that's where the William came. And my father's Charles was, I was about the third Charles or something. So, and then it ended there. I named my son Justin, but I named him Meredith, Justin Meredith. That my dad's middle name was Meredith.
My middle name, which I don't use, was a family name, and that was handed down to a poor little innocent child who could not say no.
What was it, if you don't mind me asking?
Rotherwell. He was conductor of the Marine Band sometime, and they thought that was pretty wonderful.
Kept my maiden name after I was married, and the only time I really used my husband's is when we've gone to business meetings with him, or I was room mother, or Cub Scout mother, or something, anything with their son. But otherwise, it was very unusual for me to do that because we were married in 1970.
I'm Arlington, 4th or 5th. My son's a junior. I'm not a junior. Arlington Walker's the same, but the middle initials change with generations. But I named my son the full name, H, as a middle name.
I grew up in a very small town in East Tennessee. My parents and grandparents and everybody was from that town. They had grown up there. My parents were childhood sweethearts. This is in 1940. And I was the only baby in the hospital. And my grandfather happened to have been mayor of the town at that time. And one day the nurses went to get me to take me to my mother to feed. Again, I was the only baby in the hospital, and I wasn't there. The hospital, of course, called the police, and the police officers were afraid to go and tell my grandfather. When they finally decided they had to go tell him he was in the bank, they went into the bank to see a big crowd of people in the front room, and in the circle of it was my grandfather holding me. He had just walked into the hospital, gone to the nursery, picked me up, and taken me over to the bank to show me off. That's the sort of life I had.
I had a very sickly childhood, so most of my first elementary grades, you might say I was homeschooled. Mother would get the work from the class, and she would help me with it at home. And so you might say I would have two lives, one before 1942 and one after, because that was when the sulfa and penicillin first came on the market for civilians during World War II. And that changed. I went from being a sick child with that medicine, hit all the problems that I had, and I became a very well person.
Where were you born?
In a small town outside of Boston by the name of Randolph. I was one of 6, and I was the second child.
What did you see out of your bedroom window growing up?
A next door neighbor. It was a short street with maybe about 10 or 12 houses on it.
Growing up, I saw out across the rest of the little town a bit, but trees and countryside. We were not in the high mountains of West Virginia that you see in the commercials, but we were up some elevation, and it was green in the summertime and snowy in the winter.
I saw one of those beautiful sights in town. Our little town was built down sort of in a valley surrounded by mountains. And I looked out over, it was across the river, and it was called the Bluff on the side of the mountain. And it was just beautiful. no matter what time of season, because in that area we had seasons, especially in the fall, it was so gorgeous, or dogwoods would be blooming. And after I could look out the back. But when I was, before that, by that time I was in high school, but before that, when I looked out my window, I saw my next door neighbor's house. And his room was, his window faced ours. And on hot summer nights, we'd talk to each other across the yards, because he was my best friend. Besides, he was my Roy Rogers when I was still Evans.
I think my first date was the Sadie Hawkins dance, and a girl in my class invited me to go to the dance, and I think it was the first date that I ever had. And so I met her, we went to the dance, and then we went to an ice cream shop afterwards, and it was a lot of fun, because I had been going to dancing classes in the high school, and so I had learned how to dance, and so I really enjoyed that first date.
Oh, we met at a fraternity party in college my freshman year. And it was just such a traditional development of a romance that was during the Korean War. And Lou was 5 years older than I, so he graduated ahead of me and was in, we always said he fought the war in California because he never was said any further. He was an ROTC person. And then we came here after we were married, and Lou stayed and worked on his master's, and I worked at the radio station through on. And then we came here when he was counselor, and that's when I really began to do things with schools.
Peggy and I were both teachers at Fredlin Middle School, and she was single and I was single at the time, and oddly enough, we both ended up getting there to school early, and they have a coffee thing up in the book room, and we ended up getting to knowing each other in the morning, having a cup of coffee together, and next thing you know, we started making a thing of it.
And in those days, everybody said, forget you have a master's, forget you've been teaching, because the first question they're going to ask you is, how many words a minute can you type? And I thought people were crazy. You know what? The very first thing out of the mouth of every single person, every time I went for any kind of interview, was, how many words a minute can you type? So I said, okay, I'm going to take advantage of that. I'm a pianist, I can type well, I know how to spell. So I had a job within a week at Time Inc., which was the big, and Sports Illustrated. And Sports Illustrated was a very new magazine at that time. It was 1966. And I went to Time Inc. and had a wonderful time. The expense accounts were wonderful, and the young men liked to have expense accounts, and there was a couple of the writers would come and say, let's go get a drink, or let's go to dinner, or let's do that. And I went to the theater, I traveled, had a lot of fun. Then I met my husband.
And then ended up going back into the military to get more education. Even though I had a lot in the military, I did more time. Half my time in the military was in school. In air defense, electronics, missiles, guided missile systems. All my jobs were technical. I tried regular jobs, like, material handling and stuff like that. And I couldn't get no satisfaction out of them. I mean, I would work, but it would be too boring. I had to be challenged. Most of my jobs were all technical and maintenance type jobs, repairing. Mine would always be, if it was on a machine, the machine would be broken down and I have to bring it back to life. So therefore you had to figure out what was wrong with it and repair it.
My first job was with the newspaper and radio corporation in Morgantown, which is the home of the university. And I worked with the advertising, writing and doing layout and copy, and then moved into the radio station where I did continuity writing and scheduling, and then did a little woman's show every morning, which was fun.
Working at the Navy Memorial, which I did in 1986, I was hired to run the dedication ceremony, which was going to take place in October. I needed to coordinate dedicating this memorial on Pennsylvania Avenue, which was a lot of fun, but it was a lot of work as well.
My sister was gifted and I was dyslexic and had to go through learning attention deficit type things. And so then I got really interested in that. So when I got into education and I got a master's and a lot more in that area, and found out that I had attention deficit, but at that time when I was growing up, that wasn't part of the nomenclature at all. So it helped me develop my own learning styles. And so I felt as a teacher I could also help, kids that I recognized were having that kind of problem.
I started off as an Army librarian.
Where were you based when you had that job?
Göppingen, Germany. And Schwäbisch Gmünd.
Did you speak any German or did you learn German?
I am linguistically idiotic. My tongue just doesn't make the right sounds. I cannot do R's. Now, I don't do R's well in English. And you can't think of a language they can't roll their R's or do this with their R's and that. No matter what language I attempt, it comes out horribly accented. In Germany, I would memorize what I was supposed to say when I'd go to a store. And I would very carefully say it perfectly. And the whoever I was talking to would say, "Ein Moment." And they'd go off and come back with somebody who could speak English.
After I got out of the basic school, I went to Okinawa and was stationed with as a platoon leader with a battalion. And in those days, one battalion out of Okinawa would go on these cruises, and we would go to Thailand and we would train with the Thais, or we would go to Hong Kong on R&R, And when I was in Japan, we went to a training area that was at the base of Mount Fuji. And I didn't understand the whole thing of Mount Fuji or what it meant to the Japanese and what it meant to, their life, and it was the most perfect mountain and all that kind of stuff. I don't know if you're familiar with it or not, but anyway, one of our things was to climb Mount Fuji, and that was something that I'll always remember.
I won a prize from WETA. The grand prize a few years ago was 2 round-trip tickets to Rome and a week in a hotel in Rome. And it was a party of 2. and I organized a trip with a friend of mine. It was very nice, but in getting there, we went to Venice first and spent a week in Venice, and then a couple of days in Siena, in Assisi, and then we ended up in Rome for the last week.
I don't think most people know all of the kinds of things that I was able to do in the last few years that I worked. For example, I had a chance to work with and develop a friendship with Peter Yarrow of the old Peter, Paul, and Mary group of folk singers. He was a dear good friend. That was a surprise thing. We had them all perform for one of our national conventions. I just got to do a lot of, I did consultant work in Brazil and Venezuela, and just had the time of my life doing all that. It was good. Working with the American schools that were part of the State Department program. And just lots of opportunities that I probably didn't deserve, but fully appreciated.